It's about something we might need to deal with. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Think you could take attendance? Thanks. We don't want to. We do not want to do that project today.
Good morning, Mr. Brannigan here. Teachers, please be aware we have several buses still on the road and they're going to be coming in, trickling in all morning long. So rather than having those students stop by the attendance office, please allow students in class first period without a pass. Again, we've got several buses still making pickups this morning. So if you would please allow those students in class without a pass. Thank you, Mr. Central. Have a great day.
Mr. Renshaw, could you also put the Canvas project? I don't know if you've done this. Do you have it on a module yet?
No. Yeah, linked it in the
Page I saw it link. Just asking so that we can look at it after I'm done talking to them. But I could obviously draw this out for 4 hours if I feel like it, but I'm not going to. Then that response yesterday was to do we need to report that to yeah. Okay, I think you get it.
Yeah.
If we do, we need a screenshot of the question and then the response.
all three of them.
Thanks. Yes, sir. Why? Oh, yeah. Hey, good morning, everybody. I hope you are safe at home. With the full understanding that if you're not here, I can understand that the roads are pretty bad coming in. I just heard Carmel schools called off, handful of other ones around. So we are the warriors of today, or whatever you want to call it, troopers, the grittiest of the grittiest. And so we'll call that a good thing. I've got 3 students in person. Tim, Luke, and Nate. Glad you guys made it. We'll see how many more make it as this goes on. I've suspected that this would be an issue. So Mr. Renshaw is here, but he's going to be prepping for some stuff next week and finishing up some projects that he has. But if you have any questions for him about the Nearpod on Maya Angelou yesterday, which was inspiring, please send him a message on Canvas if you need to do that. Or any of the other missing assignments that you might have. He will be here to help answer them. Today, we're going to go ahead and get class started off with a warm-up. All right, so it is, I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen share. And those of you in class, we're going to have a quick conversation. And then those of you that are here not in person, I want you to answer one of these either on Zoom in the chat function, or if you can maybe say it out loud if we have a chance. So here we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. We have France during the French Revolution. If you can think back to that documentary that you were watching last week. I know it seems like a long time ago, right? Okay, but during the Revolution, which social class would you have been in if you could pick, and why? I think this is an interesting one because I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer on this one, or a clear favorite. 2, when Robespierre, he was the guy at the end who was put himself on a paper mache mountain and put himself in a toga and tried to create a new kind of religion called the Cult of the Supreme Being. When he was killed, do you think that he was a hero or a villain? So those of you on Zoom, I already got one astute response, I believe. Go ahead and put your answers. And say if you're answering 1 or 2, just so that I know. And then in person, let's see what our responses are. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds here to answer, please. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 responses. There are 18 of you on this, so maybe you're waiting for us to give you some answers. In person, we had one person say hero and one person say villain. The argument for hero was from Mr. Luke, and that was that he did what he accomplished, what he set out to do, and that was get rid of the clergy and to get rid of the power of the nobility and the king. Tim said definitely a villain because he had so many heads cut off, and that doesn't seem to be what a hero does. In terms of the first question, we had Nate, and he said that he would be in the middle class because he would not want to be a noble, and he would not want to be in the clergy, right? But being in the middle class, you might have a chance, and you might have some money still, and you might not have been guillotined. Okay, a handful of you said that as well. I think something that was part of the third estate was probably where I would have been running. The first and second estates didn't have much chance. So yeah, all right, good short discussion on here. Again, for those of you who are participating, way to go. We'll copy those off and you will get your points. If you didn't type anything in there, you need to make sure we feel your presence here on the virtual learning for you to get your participation points today. All right, so we are going to go ahead and move on. I'm going to make this about 15 to 18 minutes at most, just so that there's time to go over the project guideline quickly, and we don't overwhelm you today. First day back in a while, okay? All right, so we're going to look at this thing known as the Age of Napoleon. Napoleon, maybe you've heard the name before. I think all of you have probably at some point in your life been told that he was really short, and that he was kind of like a short, angry guy. Some of that is true, but on the other hand, Napoleon was one of the most, like the genius military tactics and tacticians that the world had seen up to that point, and that's why he became so famous. So I want you, before we get going here, I want you to see this map. Take a look at this map. All of those black lines indicate where Napoleon went while he was alive. Okay? So things to note. I'm going to get this cool annotation thing out on the screen because I think there's some things you want to see. All right, so things to note on here. First off, I'm going to take this little draw line. So he's born down here, okay? But obviously Paris is where he became famous. But if you look outside of Paris, you'll see how many different battles he fought. One of the more remarkable battles that he fought that not many people will talk about was at the end of the French Revolution. Napoleon was way down here. You can see on the map. He was way down in Egypt fighting against, there was a group of Muslims called the Mamluks to try to control the Middle East and to try to control Egypt. Did he win? No. He lost, okay? And so what happened was the British came down there with their navy and said, no, 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 you can't do that. And they defeated Napoleon. But if you can see on the screen, he was able to sneak away from the British, come back to Paris. And that was where he basically took over the newspapers and said, I never lost. They swept it under the rug. And that's where Napoleon was able to take power. One more notable thing I want you to see is if you see Paris right here, this all the way over here is Moscow, okay? Napoleon took troops all the way into the interior of Russia, to the capital city of Moscow, and failed miserably. And there's not even a place on this map to show you where he ended up, okay? I'll start with this. They're going to send him way down here. Like I said, I can't even make a map for it. I'll show you on the screen. It just keeps going. Okay, so some of the interesting adventures here of this man named Napoleon Bonaparte. All right, let's see why he came to be this guy named Napoleon. All right, so a few facts here. He wasn't even born in actual France, okay? He was born on an island off of France called Corsica. It's part of Italy today. He wasn't rich. He was part of the Third Estate. He was recognized as being intelligent, and he went to the army because he got a scholarship. And so through getting this scholarship, he studied this thing called artillery. Which, if you don't know what that is, that's how to shoot the big cannons. Okay? So he wasn't a foot soldier. Because of this, he had a lot of, he created kind of some books and some new tactics on how to win battles using artillery, and not just using soldiers with swords or men with muskets. And that's what they did at the time. And so after the revolution was over, Napoleon would come back to France, and France was being ruled by some weak people, okay, known as the Directory. There were 5 men. After the whole revolution was said and done, 5 men lead France in what's known as the Directory, and that they don't even have elections. So the French fought for all of this enlightened stuff, like wanting to have elections and wanting to get rid of the power of the king, and the people have the power. And then all of a sudden, the National Assembly disappears. They have a 5-man directory for 5 years. Napoleon comes into town and is so famous. You can see in this picture right here that he just he peacefully overthrows the government in what's known as a coup d'etat. That's the French word for to overthrow, okay? Again, some of these you're taking notes on. These will be on your final or your midterm final exam, all right? So now, once he does that, he will claim himself to be the emperor of the Franks or the French. And so at that same time, he gets the name Holy Roman Emperor. Okay, so if you look at this picture right here, you got one man. See him holding a tiara? I guess I'll get the draw pad out again, and let me show you this. Let's go with a circle this time. So you got Napoleon right here. Okay, he had just crowned himself Holy Roman Emperor. He will be the last Holy Roman Emperor. It had lasted for 1,000 years, all the way from Charlemagne to Napoleon. But then what you're going to see on this screen is he's holding a tiara, however you say it, right here. And he's about to put it on his wife's head right here. Now, his wife was of like middle nobility and was not very famous. And so she, in a power play, had his sisters carry her massive coat, whatever you call this thing, a train, I guess, all the way down the Notre Dame, Cathedral of Notre Dame. He made him carry it. So Jacques-Louis David painted this, and then his sisters right here have kind of like these like snarky faces on them because they're mad that they had to carry this massive coat all the way down the aisle of the church to have this woman they don't respect become the queen or empress of France now. Are most of you starting to see something funny here or ironic? What's Napoleon making himself out to be? A king. They had just fought a nasty revolution, guillotined a lot of people. Thank you, Francesca. Yeah. And now they're going to do it for naught because basically he has made himself a dictator. And I'll show you why here. Okay, here's another famous picture of him in 1806. This coat was said to have weighed 80 pounds. That's how much basically cotton and fancy fabric went into this coat. Napoleon himself weighed about 140 pounds. but he's wearing an 80-pound cloak, and you'll see he's wearing a fleur-de-lis, I think is what it's called. No, it's not. A laurel wreath. You guys heard of a laurel wreath from the Greeks? When they used to win races, they'd get a laurel wreath. Well, that's why he's claiming himself like dating back to the Romans and the Greeks as well. All right, so here's a little political cartoon for you, just so that you can get an idea. So some did not agree with him, and they thought that he was, again, making himself like a king. So this is German. It says, Das ist mein lieber Sohn, an dem hochgefallen habe, which in translated English means, this is my favorite son with whom I am wholly pleased. And that is from the Bible. And that's God talking about Jesus in the Bible. But they're referring to Napoleon being the son of the devil, because that's how bad he was. Okay, in the popular vote of, so then Napoleon said, well, let's have a vote and see who likes me and who doesn't. Take a look at the results of the election. Was it a close election? Nah, it's like Russia when you get to vote for Putin, okay? You get to vote. It's just there's only one person on the ballot. Realistically, he had secret police out there eliminating anybody who would vote against him. And so in this popular vote to make him the dictator, 99.3% of France agreed that Napoleon could be the dictator. Again, all of you are saying this is wild because of what had happened earlier. Now, some things that he did. I'm not gonna go into as long as I could on this. I got 2 slides. First one though, Napoleon's gonna spread and take over almost all of continental Europe. And so when he does this, he makes everybody follow what's called the Napoleonic Code. And so this is where the idea that people thought that they were equal underneath the law. All these areas that he took over, eventually, like right after this, are going to want a constitution. There were no more wars for religion after this, because he said you have to allow people to be Catholic or Protestant. And jobs weren't given out based on nobility or who your last name was. They were given out based on how well you performed, okay? On your ability to do your job, your intelligence. So that's called the Napoleonic Code. That's a vocab word that'll be on your quiz or test. Next then, militarily. He expanded to what's known as the Rhine River. That was portions of Germany. And so he took over what was the Holy Roman Empire. Then he continued to take over more places, Spain, all of what was now Germany, Portugal, Austria, Switzerland. And so in Spain, Holland, that's the Netherlands, Italy, Switzerland, the Grand Duchy of Warsaw was Poland. The Confederation of the Rhine was basically all of the German states that were part of the Holy Roman Empire. He put a family member as the king of those places. Literally, uncles, cousins, brothers. He also has a nickname, the Kingmaker, because of the fact that he put his family in so many different power in so many different places. All right. Take a look at the picture on the right. This is a famous picture by Jacques-Louis David as well. Napoleon crossing the Alps. I just want you to look at that because once he falters, he doesn't look quite so good anymore. All right, so here you have his empire. So you're going to notice that his actual land he controls himself is in the pink. And then the land that is basically he's forced these people to be his allies are the orange and the yellow. All right. And most of you, if not all of you, I think have learned about World War II at some point, or you learned about the Holocaust in school, in middle school. Take a look at this land. What does this remind you of? Which dictator or totalitarian leader had land that looked like this? Adolf Hitler. You're not wrong. You are correct. That's why some people will say Hitler was like Napoleon. That's again something that you could debate in history, and you could play both sides of that. But definitely imperialistic and very aggressive. I don't really care so much about the top two, but the last one, what happened was all these areas that he took over started to get these things called nationalist feelings or nationalism. All right. And nationalism means pride in your country. And so because of this, Napoleon it sparks up nationalism in like areas in Italy, in Germany, in Poland, in Russia, even in Switzerland. And so once he loses, all these people are going to say, well, we want to have our own country now. We're tired of being involved in these massive empires. We want to have a say. Are they going to get one right away? No, they never do. All right. Napoleon puts together an army of around 1 million people. Okay. And they enter into Russia in the summer of 1812. And by the winter of 1813, the Russians used what's known as the scorched earth policy. And they burned everything down in their path and their retreat. They burned down every piece of farmland. They burned down every basically any type of shelter where there could be food. They killed the animals or took it with them. And so Napoleon's lines, like his supply lines, got spread out so thin. Plus, he was fighting with a bunch of people who didn't really like him, that 560,000 people either died or taken prisoner, and then the rest just left, deserted. And so there's the old adage, you don't invade Russia in the winter. The Mongols were successful at doing it, but Napoleon was not good at doing it, and neither was Adolf Hitler as well, which we'll get back to in probably 5 or 6 weeks. All right, so this is where it gets wild, all right? He was taken to Paris in 1914, and they exiled him off to this little island. Okay, right here. If you look on the map, it's crazy. This little island is kind of by his hometown city, but he wasn't supposed to be able to get off this island. And you know what the French did? They brought back the Bourbons. No. Why would you do that? That sounds so stupid, right? They brought back Louis the 18th. That had been Louis the 16th's uncle. All right, and said, all right, you're going to be the next king. Well, Napoleon escaped off this little island, and for 100 days, he controlled the government of Paris. And so the British and the Prussian army came together, and at a place in Belgium known as Waterloo, which is why there's a train station in London called Waterloo Station. It's named after the last place Napoleon was finally defeated after he respawned on this, getting off of this penal island, and came back and took over the government. So this time around, here's where they sent him. Look closely on the map. Okay, there's an arrow pointing to it. Was he going to be able to get out of this island? I think he's going to have some trouble. Let's pull a little circle here. Here's the island that he's sent to. Notice the spatial difference here between this is South America and this is Southwest Africa, and he's not escaping that island. You guys get that? It's not happening. And so he's going to die there within 5 years. Yeah. Yeah, they've excommunicated, or they've brought his body out of the grave and try to figure out how he died, because there was this theory. People were saying, oh, he was poisoned to death, and the only thing that they know is that he had cancer. And he was likely an alcoholic as well, so cirrhosis of the liver. I mean, I was reading he had ballooned up to 200 pounds, and he was like 5'6". So he was putting on some LBs, that type of thing. And so, yeah. So he'll die on that island. And this is the last painting of him. Some of you might get this image. Doesn't look quite as fancy, right? That coat probably weighed like half a pound. Not like the 80-pound coat that he was wearing. But I mean, the real thing is, what do you do afterwards? You had this French Revolution. Everyone around Europe and all of the colonies around the world heard about. Same time this is going on, you had the Haitian Revolution, which was a free slaves and black men of Haiti overthrew the French colony. The French even outlaw slavery in their colonies. And then everyone else was kind of like, what? Like, what are we supposed to do? Well, here's where they kind of made a mistake here. Only 5 countries got to participate. So all the other countries that basically could have participated were not invited. And Austria, Prussia, Russia, Great Britain, and France. Okay. These 5, France was invited just to break a tie because it was likely going to be 2-2. Austria and Prussia didn't like each other, and Russia and Great Britain didn't like each other. So they invited France. They threw a month-long party where the kings and all their delegates had a month-long party of champagne, like ballets, fancy dinners every night. Women had to have a different dress every single night. They had different silverware commemorating the event. If you go to Vienna today, you can go to what's called the Schönbrunn Palace, where it was. This is in the home of the Habsburgs in Vienna. And you can go and look at all the silverware if you're into that kind of thing. These people didn't spare a dime, and it's totally against the French Revolution ideals. It's a joke. It's like they acted like it didn't happen. And the poor people are still getting nothing out of it. So it's kind of wild. Now, here's what they tried to do. What they wanted to do was establish a balance of power in Europe so there would be no more wars. No more wars. Now, we all laugh because we know there was World War I and World War II, right? But this lasted for 100 years. This was in 1815. World War I wouldn't break out until 1914. So for 99 years, there was no more war. Containing France wasn't that difficult because France will never do much in war after this. We'll just say that. The second one is the one that most people are going to go, Miss Brunette, that sounds so dumb. Restoring the king. So instead of giving the people the power, having constitutions, they put the old kings back in power. And they didn't recognize that there had been a French Revolution and that other people around Europe, even around the world, had heard about this and wanted the rights of the Enlightenment. Okay. So last but not least, my last slide here. I guess I'm going to kind of walk you through these bullet points because they're pretty important. So they redrew the map of Europe without thinking about ethnic groups or nationalism. Okay. They had created basically a country of Germany and Poland, but then they said, no, you're not really going to exist. We're going to give that land to Prussia and Austria. That's going to sow the seeds for World War I. 2, they underestimated the power that nationalism had, that these people wanted to be their own nation. 3, They didn't allow Germany to unify. If you look at the map on here, if you really look at it, what would be Germany is still just a bunch of patchwork of states. And then even more, lastly, I think most of you in the room understand this, is revolutions and like those feelings don't just go away. They can't be suppressed, especially if people, you know, had lost their life or you read a book that inspired you. The people wanted to go forwards and not backwards. And so you're going to see right after this, Karl Marx and Frederick Engels are going to write the Communist Manifesto. So you're going to start to see socialism and communism jump in. You're just going to start to see another set of revolutions in 1830, another set of revolutions in 1848, all of them based on the problems at this meeting that they did not address, and that was that people wanted a constitution and people wanted basic rights guaranteed to them. Okay. I said 18 to 20, it ended up going 30. My apologies. What I wanted to do here before we get too far along, just one more thing with everybody. And that was, yes, I got it viewed on pages here. What was the name of the page you used yesterday? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. It's under modules. Gotcha. Current events project. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead do a new screen share here for those of you on Zoom, please. And for those of you in person, I'm gonna go ahead and drag this over. So this is at the top of the modules, all right? This is the current events project. Yesterday, Mr. Renshaw had this on the screen for you, along with the rubric, okay? Tomorrow in class, on Zoom, I gotta resume the share, my bad. Okay, tomorrow in class, whether it is on Zoom or whether it is in person, we're going to be picking our current event projects and we're going to be picking the dates. You're going to be going over your project with the class, okay? You need to be very, very detailed here. You need to make sure you go through how to do this because I changed this completely and Mr. Renshaw put his touch on it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and then the slides are spelled out exactly with what you need to have on them, okay? So I made it much easier to understand than last semester. There is no paper involved, remember that? And then here's the criteria for how it's going to be graded. So you should know exactly how it's going to be graded. You can see what you want to get on it. 15-point grade reduction for not having your information ready to present on your due date. So think about 2 things tonight. One would be, what are the 3 things you want to study the most? 2 would be, do I want to go in the next week or 2 and just get it done with? You know, do I have time to just crank out these Google slides and this information? Or is this something that I'd rather study for the next 2 months and do it later on towards the end of April? Okay. Anything else? All right. So I'm going to respect your time. You should have 10 minutes or 12 minutes until the class is over. If you have any missing work, obviously you need to get that into Mr. Renshaw immediately. We have talked about turning off the assignments after a set amount of days. As the late work is just starting to get to a place where we can't control, and you're starting to get yourself so far behind that it's not really creating any kind of habits for the future. So, again, I hope everybody enjoyed the Maya Angelou. I think it was in Nearpod Very inspiring woman. And we're going to be doing a couple more of those during the month of February to celebrate Black History Month. Okay. All right. Unless you have a question, feel free to get off the Zoom. Again, stretch for a little bit. I know today's going to seem long, so thanks for being here.
Have a good
I
day.
think you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Those of you in class, do you have a question? Do we have an intro this week? No.